Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nayaswami Padma, and I am bringing you today's 12 o'clock reading of the prayer demand from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda. I hope all of you are feeling and bringing peace and calmness into our nation today, and that most of you, if not all of you, got some sleep last night, a good night's sleep, and heeded the advice of all the articles. I don't watch the news, but I read the headlines on my phone, and they all warned that this process could take several days, if not weeks, depending, although I'm hopeful that it's more like days, and that we'll come through this election unscathed and renewed for the next chapter of American history. Today's reading is an interesting one, the prayer demand. It's a long one, so bear with me. It's number 164. Slip thy little dewdrop into thy great lake, not to become lost, but to merge into oneness with thee. Teach me to be a dewdrop enchanted with divine love, slipping unaffected down the lotus leaf of seductive sense lures to thy glistening waters of wisdom. I am thy immortal dewdrop, sliding freely and not adhering to the leaves of past, present, and future lives. I smooth the slopes of my mind with wise restraint, that the thirsty pores of temptation might absorb none of my strength. I love that. I smooth the slopes of my mind with wise restraint, that the thirsty pores of temptation might absorb none of my strength. I am thy prodigal dewdrop, quivering in the hallows of life and death, waiting to slip down when it can to thy shoreless sea. Though long truant, I, thy tiny dewdrop, am homeward bound, however long the journey takes. After this rhythmic dance of life, rising with birth and sinking with the downbeat of death, I will refresh myself at last in thy unmoving sea. I do not want to lose myself. Thy tiny dewdrop craves only by merging in thee to feel that I am one with all the other dewdrops in thy ocean. I will be a rainbow-hued drop, one with thy omnipresence, and yet in my omniscience aware of my former dewdrop existence. I pray that all God-thirsty souls will come and drink from the great source of all our lives. What an incredibly beautifully written, poetic prayer demand, and so timely. You know, shortly before I went into seclusion last week, I rewatched the movie about Nelson Mandela's life. And I forget what the name of it was. I think it was De Klerk and Mandela, the Klerk and Mandela. And it was all about the struggle that he had from the time that he was imprisoned to the time he was released from prison to the time he became president of the nation. And he called it the Rainbow Nation. And it was really quite a forward thinking and beautiful image. And Yogananda uses it here too. I will be a rainbow hued dewdrop, one with thy omnipresence, and yet in my omniscience, aware of my former dewdrop existence. I pray that all God-thirsty souls will come and drink from the great source of all our lives. All our lives. And that is one outer outcome of this goal of self-realization. It is the fact that in that state of consciousness, we're aware of ourselves in all lives, in everyone we meet, good, bad, indifferent, saintly, evil, and somewhere in between. We see, we not just see, we experience from the inside the oneness, the divineness that is enlivened by each soul that lives, and not only human beings, but plants. Yogananda, one time he was guiding the monks in putting together that beautiful garden at the lake shrine that he created down in Southern California. And the men were being a little bit rough with one of the big trees they were trying to put in place. And he said, "Be careful. Don't you know it's alive?" And so it doesn't matter whether it's plants or animals or human beings or oceans or climates, as in climate change. It doesn't matter what aspect of life it is. We recognize in a state of self-realization, in a state of oneness with God, we recognize the divinity in absolutely everything. And I'm heartened to think that that's the divine promise for each and every one of us. I'm heartened to think that that's the divine promise for the ascendant age that we live in. And it doesn't feel like it right now. There's a lot of strife, from coronavirus to economic upset to political upset. There's an awful lot to racial upset. There's a tremendous amount going on in our nation today, in our world today. I mean, there's genocides on the other side of the world that would just make you weep for lifetimes. And so there is a lot of strife, and yet on some level, there is a movement of consciousness into the ascendant. And that's where we want to put our focus. Yogananda used to say, think about goodness, be about goodness, breathe about goodness, and you will become that goodness. That is my prayer for all of us today. And we'll see you again tomorrow for Whispers from Eternity. Joy to you.